Okay, so now that I've given you a bit of context, before we jumped into Descartes, let's jump in. So the first text that we read this semester is Descartes' Discourse on Method, which actually is a really long title. It's the Discourse on the Method for Conducting One's Reason Well and for Seeking Truth in the Sciences. So back to some context, remember that the Discourse on Method was published in 1637, and that's 27 whole years after Galileo published his observations of planetary phenomena and sunspots, and hey, there's no possible way that the Earth could be at the center of the universe, blah blah blah, in the Starry Messenger. And this is about 100 years after Copernicus publishes his heliocentric view, which, you know, we talked about already, totally dismantled the Ptolemaic view, which was, you know, commonly accepted as the dominant paradigm for centuries. So imagine how all of these people feel in the wake of this. Descartes and all of his contemporaries, they basically had the rug pulled out from under them. I mean, imagine believing something for your entire life and, you know, believing that, yes, the sky's blue and the grass is green, and then you wake up one morning and you've got some scientist on TV telling you, actually you're wrong, the sky is orange and the grass is purple. It would change the way you view the world, right? So people for a long time had believed that the Ptolemaic system was just the way things are. And it made sense because it was neatly aligned with Christian theology. And so when Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo come around, they're making these discoveries that are basically antithetical to what a lot of people had believed for a really long time. In the aftermath of this, you could imagine that it's no wonder that Descartes and people like him are seeking a new foundation for knowledge, because all of the previous knowledge we had was tied up in the Bible and biblical explanations about the universe, and that foundation totally crumbled. Earth becomes just another planet, the sun is just another star, and once we have Galileo articulating the concept of a mathematical universe that's not dictated by the will of God, but it's dictated by mechanics, right, and mathematical laws, what people had believed for a really long time is suddenly totally wrong. So Descartes is like, well, now what? I've got to start from scratch. I've got to build all of my knowledge up from one solid foundation. So that's what he's doing in the discourse. He tells us very early on that good sense is the best distributed thing in the world because everyone thinks that they have it. But the point of this is that it's not enough to have a good mind. The main thing is to apply it well. So I love that mantra. I think you can apply it to a lot of what we do in Western Civ, in this class, but in college as well, right? I mean, you're not just soaking up information, you're learning how to apply the information that you receive. I like to start out with big questions. You call them essential questions or whatever. But Descartes, who we commonly refer to as the father of modern epistemology, is concerned with the following questions. These aren't the only questions he's concerned with, and I don't know if we're going to answer all of them sufficiently, but generally this is the kind of stuff that we're doing when we look at this text. First of all, is knowledge possible? Can we know anything? And you might say, yes, of course, duh, why else are we here in school? But that's, we're going to look at knowledge in sort of a different way. If knowledge is possible, what on earth can we know? And where do our beliefs come from, and what kind of evidence grounds them, right? So in virtue of what evidence can we be sure that our beliefs are reasonable, are true, stuff like that. So it's a text about knowledge. It's also a text about what it means to be human. Like who are we as humans and what are we made up of? Really specifically, it's asking the question whether we have souls. And Descartes' also going to get into the territory of whether or not God exists. That's something for a little later, but these are the questions we deal with. So if you were to summarize the Cartesian Project in a sentence, Descartes is looking for a solid foundation for knowledge. You'll see him use these construction metaphors all the time, like on page 16 where he says, I rooted out from my mind all of the errors that have previously been able to slip into it. My entire plan tended simply to give me assurance and to cast aside the shifting earth and sand in order to find rock or clay. So what he's doing, he's trying to find a solid foundation to stand on. One thing that he could use as like a piece of foundational knowledge to build all of his other knowledge up on. He's trying to clear the cobwebs out of his head, right? Rooting from his mind all of the errors that have previously been allowed to slip into it. The important thing about Descartes, one important thing about him, is that the sort of source of knowledge really shifts. And we saw this in the transitions lectures too, but Descartes is really big about bringing in this shift in the foundation of our knowledge, moving it from external authority and customs to the individual. So no longer do we have to rely on the Bible or the books or anything that you read to give you knowledge about the world. Now the individual reasoning self becomes the foundation for certainty, because we are rational, because we are humans and we have this capacity to uncover truth. Then because of this, we are the foundation for knowledge. So Descartes really gives us a way of thinking. He gives us a way of arriving at something that we can call knowledge. So technically, in essence, knowledge is possible in Descartes' world. He distinguishes between two different kinds of knowledge, though, right? So there's knowledge that's based on received ideas. So knowledge that you get when you open up a book and you read Galileo, or when you open up the Bible and you read the laws in Leviticus or something like that. So there's knowledge that you get from other places, and then there's knowledge that you arrive at on your own. Descartes says, as long as I merely considered the customs of other men, I found hardly anything there about which to be confident. Custom, knowledge based on custom, that's the kind of stuff that people believe because they have always believed it for all of eternity, so it's customary to believe this. So he says, look, I learned not to believe anything too firmly of which I had been persuaded only by example and custom. He's trying to arrive at knowledge on his own, through his capacity of reason. I little by little freed myself from many errors that can darken our natural light and render us less able to listen to reason. We're going to talk about this a lot this semester, but you will see this picture of the human being the rational animal, right? The rationality is something that's natural to humans. On Descartes' view, that it's like the natural light within us that can be obscured or darkened by frankly, bullshit, stuff that comes in that we don't have reasons to believe. Descartes also knocks like a standard education. He says, look, I went to school and I did all my book learning and I traveled and I still didn't arrive at anything that I could say was anything close to knowledge. So we're really looking at this sort of new way of arriving at truth. The way that Descartes is going to go about all this is through using what he calls the method of doubt. And that's the way that he's going to try to establish this starting point, this totally certain starting point to build up all other knowledge. And the way he does this is by doubting everything. Again, we're trying to get rid of that knowledge that's based on custom. When you attempt to doubt everything, what's weird is that you become confronted with how uncertain your knowledge actually is. Even the stuff that seems totally obvious to us, right? So Descartes gives us an example. He's like, there's, what could be clearer than the fact that I'm right here? I'm sitting in this chair, there's a fire, I'm holding this piece of paper in my hands. I can be totally sure about that, right? But wait a minute, I've had a dream before where I was in the exact same spot and the fire was crackling and I had this piece of paper in my hand. How do I know that I'm not dreaming right now? You don't, right? The thing that you think is, you can be totally certain about, which is that I'm here, I'm sitting in front of this computer, but wait a minute, I've had a dream before like this. So I can't even be sure of what I'm experiencing through my senses. Our senses just aren't reliable. I can't be sure that things in the world exist. I could be dreaming this whole universe that I live in. I also can imagine times where my senses have deceived me. I could be on drugs, right? I could be hallucinating. Or there could be like an evil genius who's pulling the puppet strings and making me believe that I have sense experiences. The simple fact of the matter is we can't be really certain about anything that we think we're certain about, right? So using this method, trying to doubt everything, Descartes decides, hey, if I try to doubt everything and find one thing that can't be doubted, that's the thing that can be used as the foundation for all of my knowledge. So he's trying to arrive at one single truth that is certain, indubitable, and that truth is going to serve as the foundation of our building for all of the knowledge that we're going to put on top of that. So one little truth is all Descartes needs, and he will find that truth, and I will talk to you about that in the next set of slides.